She left South Africa for Israel nearly half a century ago, and her message of Ubuntu seems to be doing more for peace in the Middle East than the many envoys we've sent to help end that conflict. Also on the show, our own war against crime in marginalized communities. This is Checkpoint, and I'm Nkepile Mabuse. The embattled community of Reiger Park recently launched the Enough is Enough campaign to fight drug abuse and crime. Crime is commonplace across South Africa, but are there post-apartheid struggles that are peculiar to predominantly coloured areas? Checkpoint producer Megan Lupka spent some time here in Westbury finding out.
First, it was Tegrin Morris. The 4-year-old was dragged to his death after a car hijacking in Reiger Park on the East Rand. His mother's pleas to be allowed to free her son from his car seat were ignored. Then, just weeks later, Reiger Park was in the news again. The charred body of 3-year-old Cuban van Wyk was found on a mine dump. He'd suffered multiple injuries before being set alight.
I feel very traumatized. I feel like they kill my son. He must also die.
A suspect known to the community was arrested and is awaiting trial in Boksburg. So what's causing crime and abuse in these predominantly coloured communities?
Our communities, we need role models. We lack role models. In Beckersdale, where I was born and bred, we lack role models. And youngsters who do as they wish, because we as men folk and we as people who are holding positions of significance, we are too busy for the youngsters, and the youngsters then become involved in these wrong things, or they get sucked up into the channels of supply of drug distribution, or in the drug trade and in the hijacking. They become easily available to supply lines of criminal gangs.
Limited economic opportunities, poor education, and alcohol and drug abuse also contribute.
So if there can be more jobs, stop the crime. The crime is so popular. The drugs is the main thing in Westbury.
The shooting of 3-year-old Luke Tibbetts in Westbury brought many of these factors to the fore. He was shot while sitting in a car with his mother, the innocent victim of what seems to be ongoing gang rivalry. After 6 days on life support, he died.
All I want to do, I just want to hear his voice. I just want him to call me.
His death turned the focus to Westbury, which lies sandwiched between Sophiatown and Soweto. A dumping ground in the 60s when blacks were forced out of Sophiatown to make way for whites. It became fertile ground for gangs and crime. They're still around today and wield too much power. Westbury resident Shaheem Ishmael says it's time to break the cycle. Jails are filling up.
The prisons are overflowing of this community. It's overcrowded of our youngsters, and we lose them in prison.
And now 2 more young men are behind bars. Lindray Kaku and Keenan Mokwena. Both have appeared in court in connection with the shooting of little Luke Tibbetts. Luke had been sitting on his mother's lap in a car when the two allegedly drew their guns. Both are alleged to be gang members, both no strangers to crime. Lindray Kaku is facing 5 charges for Luke's murder, as well as a string of other charges including attempted murder and the unlawful possession of a firearm. 18 counts in total. And he's only 22. 28-year-old Keenan Mokwena has been charged with pointing a firearm. He says he's innocent and the bullets that day were meant for him.
I mean, if it wasn't for me, there would have been 1 or 2 bullet holes in my car, but there's 8.
He has a history too: fraud, robbery and breaking into a car. Keenan Mokwena and Lindray Kaku are known around here, but few are prepared to speak out. An insider told us this shooting was to settle old scores, in this case the 2011 murder of a man called Ati Moy.
I know these people, I know these guys. They are not innocent. Mokoena and Kaku hate each other.
But what is the beef between Keenan Mokoena and Lindray Kaku?
I think it's about the killing of Ati. Now they want revenge.
What he says is in stark contrast to Lindray's mother Marcel, who remembers a sweet, shy child.
He was a very quiet person. He didn't have much friends. The only friends he had was his sister and then the friends in the street, like the neighbors' children. He was a very cool and collective child.
Not too dissimilar to what Keenan's aunt Shirley remembers about her nephew.
Keenan was 'n baie pragtige seentjie. Hy was 'n kindjie wat altyd 'n smile op hom gesig gehad. Hy was nie van hy babietjies wat altyd huil. En hy was 'n baie jolly babietjie gewees.
According to his mother, Lindray had it all going for him. He won a bursary to attend a prestigious international school.
And when I got home, he says, "Ma, there was white people there by the school. They say I'm going to this rich school." I said, "What rich school?" "German school." I said, "What are you going to do?" He was so excited. He said, "I'm going to pass, and I'm going to do this, and I want to be a lawyer." And then we had to pay 15,000 rand, but that time we didn't have the money. So everything just went. So actually I blame myself as a mom for not having that money to send him to that school. Maybe he would have turned out to be a better person or a better child.
So a lack of money denied Lindray the opportunity to turn out differently. Keenan Mokwena's family had means, it seems, and it's hard to work out why he's behind bars today.
Keenan het gelyk om gymnastics. Hy was om sports. En het baie bol gelyk en musiek. Dan vat hy so met die mes en die vark. Dan slaan hy lyk as dromme. En dan sing hy en dan bly ons almal stil en moet ons nou luister na hom. Want as ons nie luister na hom nie, dan huil hy. Dan sê ons moet luister. So was hy gewees.
Keenan finished school and enrolled to study at a college. Lindray dropped out.
After standard 8, he just didn't want to go back to school. He just said to me, I don't want to go back to school. I said, okay, if you don't want to go back to school, you can no longer stay in my house.
And so, from being church-going and family-orientated, Lindray was left to his own devices.
We're not violent people. If you can see his father, if you can see his father's background, if you can see my background, I mean now really, they can't blame us. It's what your child do in the street. We don't go out of this gate every 5 minutes following our children. We don't do that. When I sit in the house, when he lies on this couch, he's my child. When we play in this house, when he bakes a cake for us, he's my child. But when he goes out this gate, he's no longer my child.
Why do you say that?
Because we don't know what's happening outside.
Keenan het geweet dat onze familie is baie well known. En hy het geweet dat die mense sal omkom en miskien sê ons sien Keenan rook of ons sien die of ons sien die. Daarom het hy nie belang gestel in snaakse dinge nie.
In fact, both families claim neither Keenan nor Lindray ever carried guns.
Honestly speaking, in front of the family, he's never shown us that he has a gun. We never saw him with a gun before.
This insider told us a different story.
Most these guys carry guns. They are never without guns.
Both Keenan and Lindray were in steady relationships. Keenan's getting married and Lindray's about to have a child with his girlfriend Nikki.
If Lindray was a gangster or something, my father wouldn't have allowed me to be with Lindray because my father's a very strict person. And if he knew Lindray did it, he wouldn't even have stood with the family or stuff. he would have been at home and stuff, but he says Lendre is innocent, and that's why he's standing with the family.
Most agree the death of Luke Tibbetts needs to be a lesson so that the cycle is broken for the sake of future generations.
After the break, what are the solutions, and are there any measures in place to change things around? Try as we like to be a rainbow nation, it seems the divisions of apartheid will always remain, as long as there are townships that house blacks, Indians and colours. The solution must surely be in uplifting individual communities. Let's find out who is trying to make a difference here in Westbury. In the heart of Westbury is a hidden gem. A sporting academy that began 6 years ago and that refuses to give up on its goals, to get kids off the street doing something that gives them purpose.
We saw a need for such a development in our community, and how to capture the youngsters in one fold, and how to keep them together in one fold, and also to monitor their developments.
Director Shahim Ismail says they don't only cater for talent from Westbury, but surrounding suburbs too. 8-year-old Tariq Adams from Bosmont has represented South Africa at the World Junior Golf Challenge in Scotland.
It went well. I came 39th out of 550 people.
And why do you like golf?
Because it's a gentleman's game and I just love it.
What do you want to say to other young boys?
Stop watching TV and come play golf. It's fun.
Sadly, not many parents come here to support their kids, but Tariq's dad is never far from his son's side.
He's interested in the sport and he wants to. He asked me if I don't want to go. He says, come, let's go have a round of golf. So that just shows, that he looks up to me to support him in these things. When you come here, you find that all these children are there. The parents are not there. And they kind of send the children to the coach as a parent, and that's not good.
Half of the parents I don't know here. I've got kids here for 5 years. I've never met the parents. They rather come and tell me, you are our parents. I don't know the parents. We write letters, we call them to the meetings. When we have the meeting, we only have 10 parents. The very same parents that are committing themselves throughout the year. And this is a problem. The interest of our parents towards our kids, that needs to be completely changed around.
It's not funds keeping them away. The well-equipped centre is free. Shahim does what he can to raise money to keep it going, and he makes sure the academic side is catered for too. Any slacking on the homework front means less time outdoors.
So we also monitor the educational side. We look at how they are, going forward in the educational side. And I can say a lot of our youngsters that are in academy is doing very well at school level. We'll find 1, 2 of them, then we stop them immediately, no more sports, got to focus on the education side. So I think it's working that we've got a structured development.
On the walls are Westbury sporting legends like footballer Stephen Pienaar, in-demand attacking midfielder Keegan Dolly, and Tyrone Sandows, who plays for Sao Paulo in Brazil. A big deal needs to be made of role models, says radio personality Eusebius Makaiser.
I do think in the colour community we've got to talk bluntly about whether we feel too sorry for ourselves, how we're going to deal with self-esteem, lack of role modelling. But it would be helpful if you could see coloured characters, for example, in a soapie that play positive roles that are not just part of the skullduggery and the thugs in a particular storyline.
Otherwise, the cycle will continue and the gangster lifestyle will be perpetuated in coloured communities countrywide.
You see a lot of coloured people having a lack of faith in whether they have a stake in this country in terms of the politics. You see a lot of coloured South Africans despondent about their chances of getting a job, and you see a lot of them joining, for example, gangs as an alternative way of feeling like they belong.
Shahim is one of far too few trying to make a difference, trying to give children with dreams a chance to realize them before they end up like Lindre Kaku and Keenan Mokwena.
We need people not to give awards to us, but to come and help and build us. Help and build. This is a community with enormous potential. It's a lovely community.
After the break, the South African mother of a slain soldier does her bit for peace in the Middle East. It began with the kidnap and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers by Palestinian extremists, and then the retribution killing of a 15-year-old Palestinian boy by Israeli extremists. Not for the first time, this age-old conflict spiraled into dreadful bloodshed. South Africa sent envoys, Aziz Pahad and Zola Skweyiya, to call for peace. This week, we report on what one South African woman is doing on the ground in Israel to encourage reconciliation.
When Robbie Damlin left South Africa for Israel almost half a century ago, she didn't imagine that this was where she would build her life and lose her son. At the start of the Six-Day War in 1967, Robbie exchanged her middle-class home in Johannesburg for a chicken house on a kibbutz. Israel's conflicts have shaped her choices ever since. For the last 12 years, she's been a peace activist. A decision born at a terrible cost: the death of her son, David.
I now know what the price is of the conflict, but I haven't changed as a human being. I mean, what I said before David was killed and what I say now, it's more or less the same thing. The only thing is now more people listen to me. I'm not a different person, I'm just a person with a lot more pain.
David was a master's student in the philosophy of education. He was killed by a Palestinian sniper while doing reserve duty with the Israeli Defense Force. Robbie says the first words that came out of her mouth when she learnt of his death were, "Do not take revenge in the name of my son." She joined the Parents' Circle, a group of Palestinian and Israeli families, each of whom had lost a loved one to the conflict. They promote reconciliation as an alternative to hatred. Sharing tragedy is the only way forward.
After David was killed, I really was looking for something that would make a difference. I met Palestinian mothers, and I recognized that we shared the same pain.
Growing up in South Africa, Robbie was active against apartheid, and her uncle successfully defended Nelson Mandela in his first treason trial. She wanted to put that experience to good use in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
If you consider the hatred in South Africa was no less than it is here, and the conflict there seemed no less intractable than this does, is that if there's no framework for a reconciliation process as an integral part of any future peace agreement, there'll just be another ceasefire. And that's what keeps happening, and this whole cycle of violence continues.
Last month, former Deputy Foreign Minister Aziz Pahad and former Minister Zola Skweyiya were sent as envoys to Israel and Palestine. Whether they achieved anything is debatable. Their mission was not reported on in the Israeli press. But our ambassador to Israel thinks the South African experience carries some weight.
Everybody understood that if we don't sit down and negotiate, sooner or later we can just all of us destroy each other and have
a land that is barren, flowing with blood.
Blood that continues flowing in Gaza after yet another ceasefire collapse. More than 2,000 people have been killed in Israel's Operation Protective Edge, many of them women and children. Hamas spokesperson Ahmed Youssef is unaware of the South African peace mission too, but he says the intervention of African brothers is always welcome.
We do believe that we have a lot of things that we can learn from the South African experience, how we can rebuild a country after being seen and occupied by foreigners. They will dealing with the apartheid system and with the Afrikaners that struggle in South Africa is similar to the Palestinian struggles.
But it's this perceived alliance that makes some Israelis doubt South Africa's neutrality. Among them, more than 20,000 South Africans who call Israel home, like businessman Avram Jaffe.
Much as the country would like to be involved and continue the legacy of former President Mandela in terms of reconciliation and trying to come out with a workable solution. However, they've demonstrated a strong pro-Palestinian bias.
Former Israeli ambassador Tova Herzl thinks it's only intensified in the decades since she served in Pretoria.
Anybody that wants Israel to listen, anybody that wants to play a role must show that they have sympathy and understanding and empathy for Israel's concerns and not just for Palestinian concerns.
But Aziz Bahad says they will continue trying to understand all sides.
We've got a better understanding of their perspectives on the negotiations, the way forward. We don't have a magic wand to solve the problem. Ours is to share our experiences, give our own understanding of what the serious crisis is, and see how we can make our contribution to what's going on.
As diplomatic efforts stutter along and mutual mistrust between Israel and Palestine increases, Robbie hasn't lost hope.
We could be such a powerful tool if we would work together and talk in the same voice.
That's all from us this week. Please do give us your feedback. Our Twitter handle is @checkpoint_ENCA. Next week, the big fat debate. How did we become the most overweight nation in sub-Saharan Africa? Thanks for watching Checkpoint. I'm Ngepile Mabuse.